Hello and welcome to another part of my Souls-like combat tutorial series. In this part I'm gonna show you how to create rolling, stepping back and input buffering. So let's get into it. First, go to your third-person character, right-click create custom event, name it movement input handler, and it will have one input. It will be called duration of the type float and another input of the type boolean, and it will be called stop input. Now let's check if we want to stop input. If yes, then we set movement input to false. If we don't want to stop input, we get the duration, get retriggerable delay, set movement input to true. Now it is done, we can go to the rolling input. We can drag from cancelled. This means that we just tapped the button, and now we want to check if the movement input is true. And we also want to check if stamina is at least 1. Now if that's true, we want to stop the stamina region, and we also want to create a new macro called handle, roll and step back. It will have one input of the type execute called execute. Now let's go back to the event graph, hook the macro, go back into it, right click and type movement input handler. Now get status component. We want to decrease stamina, and the amount I'm gonna decrease is 15. Now even though we check for 1 stamina and decrease 15 stamina, it will never go under the 0 because the decreased stamina is set up that way with the select. Now we want to set the current player state, and for that we need to create 2 player states. One's gonna be rolling, another one's gonna be step back. Now go back to the third person character. Oh, actually we need a branch before this, and we want to check if the player is actually using his movement keys. Now let's set the current player state, and upon true it's gonna be rolling because we will have the movement key input. If the player is not using his movement keys, then we want to step back. Now right click, play any montage, the target's gonna be self, and also copy this for the step back. Now right click, get last movement input vector, and get rotation from X vector. Right click on the return value, split struct pin, and now right click again and set actor rotation. Hook this to rolling play any montage, and also split struct pin for the new rotation and hook the yaw rotation. This will make it so whenever the player character rolls, it will rotate it to the player input keys. And also, if the animations that you use are specifically tailored for this, then you could get the sequence here and just get the movement input handler and set the return value to the duration, and it would work beautifully. But because my animations are not perfect, I'm gonna do it different way. But now at the end we also want to start the stamina region again. And the same thing goes for stepping back. Also for the rolling iframes, let's create a variable called can be hit, and it's gonna be boolean, and it will be true at default. And now we need to create the anim montages. So get your animations, right click on them, create anim montage, and open them up. Right click on the notify and create new notify. This is gonna be the reset movement input that I've talked about before. Now right click again, create a new notify. This one will be called toggle iframe. It will start right at the start of the animation and at 10 frames for me. So I'm gonna have 10 iframes. Right click again and notify, new notify, and this one will be called reset player state. Let's do the same thing for the step back animation, and I'm gonna set this to 9 iframes. Now go back to the third person character, set your anim montages. Now we need to set the anim notifies to actually do something. So go to the animation blueprint of the player character, right click, get your anim notify for reset movement input, get the character reference and reset input handler. Now right click again, get the toggle iframe notify, get character reference again, and get the can be hit, also set can be hit, Let's get a branch, check if can be hit is true. And if it is, we want it to be false. And if it isn't, we want it to be true. And right click, get your reset player state notify, get the character reference, and set current player state to none. Now if we play, we can roll. But I see some bug here. Oh, of course, we also need to refresh the stamina bar here. So let's get your UI and refresh the stamina bar. And now when we play and roll, we can see that the rolling is functional. We also can roll if we have 0 stamina, but we can instantly roll when we have at least 1 stamina, just like in Souls games. Oh, we actually have another bug. We can spam the roll, and I think I know why. So yeah, the movement input handler at the start isn't set to stub input. So yeah, don't forget to check that, and now when you try to spam it, it won't let you. And we can also step back. Now for the input buffering, let's go to the event graph, right click, create a custom event, call it input buffer. It's gonna have an input called input action, and it will be called input action. Now it's gonna have another input of the type boolean, and it will be called stamina. Firstly, we want to check if stamina is true or false. And if it is, it means we have enough stamina for the input action itself. So we want to check if the input action is passed. If it is, we want to create a variable called stored input buffer. I'm gonna print some string here so you can actually see it in action. Now if the input action itself is not passed through the input buffer, we want to actually check if we stored the input already. So let's get the stored input buffer, check if it's valid. Now if we actually have stored input buffer, we want to get the player controller, get enhanced input local player subsystem, inject input. And actually, I think I know what they should be used for, but in action, inject input vector for action worked for me. So if you actually know what the inject input for action does and how it communicates, please let me know. But for now, let's just get inject input vector for action, get the stored input as an action, and set the value to 20. Also, don't know why, but it just works. And don't forget to reset the store input buffer. Now let's go back to the rolling input action itself. And right here at the false, we want to get the input buffer. And the input action will be the input action from the event. And also the stamina will be from the check for stamina. So what this means is that we want to input buffer whenever we do have the stamina for the action, but we actually can't perform the action right now, which means that we are either rolling already or being hit or attacking or whatever. Now when do we want the input buffer to occur? Well, of course, as soon as we unlock the movement input for the player. So in the movement input handler, get the input buffer. Let's just stick the stamina to true and leave the input action to null. Now with this, we can see that the input buffer is actually working. As I said, I don't know really how it works, so if anyone knows how the inject input action actually works and what it does and why do I need the vector there, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, this is the input buffer. You could also create an animatify for this and make the input buffers triggerable just in certain parts of the animation, but just for the showcase, this is enough. So, I hope this tutorial helped you somehow, and have a wonderful day.